Good day, viewers. You are welcome to another episode of Bulwark against drug addiction. And right now, we'll be taking the topic, which is the relationship between drug addiction and suicide. With me in the studio is Mr. Nathaniel. Nice to have you, Mr. Nathaniel.
You're welcome.
Good day, sir.
Yeah, good day.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Nathaniel, suicide is common now in our own time. And likewise, drug addiction too is also common. Is there any link between the two?
Yes, there are links between suicide and
Drug addiction.
drug addiction. Remember, suicide itself is not a behavior. But when we look at suicidal behaviors and also those who rate at which people attempt suicide or people who really committed suicide, looking at the risk factors, the relationship between addiction is high based on research. And there is a complicated relationship between addictions and suicide.
Okay. So it is complicated. Now, how complex or complicated is the relationship between drug addiction and suicide?
Yeah, people who are drug addicts tends to, have their tendencies to think of suicide.
Why?
Why? Because most of them tends to be a victims of depression.
Depression. Okay.
So, with that depressions and struggling with depressions, that is where the tendency for suicide comes in place.
Okay.
And there is this circle between the addictions, depressions, and tendency to commit suicide.
Okay.
And when you tend to make those who are actually addicted to one substance or the other withdraw, there's this struggle within them because they are suffering from certain illness. The substance they are addicted to are, occupying certain space within them. They are using it as a coping mechanisms because of certain struggle they are going through. And if they do not seek appropriate help for them to be diagnosed and being treated, that's, preempts these suicide thoughts. And, when suicide thoughts also comes, it also leads to addictions.
Okay.
People want to, because of that pressure to suppress that thought, they tend to, exhibit several actions of, taking substance, use substance or drugs to be able to eliminate or neutralize those thoughts. So there's a struggle. And at the end of the day, within that struggle of, be able to battle or take care of issues that they are struggling with, which we know depression is a major factor, leads towards that journey to suicide. So there is this, relationship between, addictions and, suicidal behaviors. Because that's what we will
okay. So the way to go now is to really identify certain suicidal behaviors. And that will help us to really know someone who is battling. Okay, because like a battle of will.
Yeah.
Who is experiencing this battle of will to overcome depression by addiction. When addiction fails, the suicide comes in. So what are the certain suicidal behaviors that can is demonstrated by someone who is depressed?
Remember, this suicidal behaviors are bred by mental illness, challenges of mental health, and there are these signs that you'll be able to notice. You'll be able to notice all the signs, and people tends to begin to withdrawals. You begin to see that the withdrawals, there is these things they cannot explain
to others
they are going through. And that's why we have to be sensitive to people around us. Yeah. There are this struggle within their thought, within their feelings, and which also, they are sometimes they experience some certain impulses pushing them to want to do some things, that are not even convenient for them. So these are behaviors we need to notice. There are signs of mental illness that are common to be able to know. And these times you can look at it in the way those people behave as bits, in some, some people, even though little things can easily get them fed up. And you just put a little pressures on them and you discover how I can't do that. I will keep myself. Why am I in this world for? Those kind of statements are not to be taken for granted. For instance, I've just really related with a family where a guy supposed to, fail an exam and is supposed to actually recite for that exam, and but he saw it as a big burden to do it, as if the world is about to crash, because it cannot really accommodate failures. So as such, so him handling that circumstances become too big for him because of the state of the mind. And as such, he begins to why am I the only one? What am I even doing in this world for? No, these are signs of mental illness, knowing that this person is experiencing some distress that needs to
address.
Instead of you are lazy, you are this, and abandon, you need to refer that person to an expert that can help that go through it. Because remember, suicide, when you begin to see that ideations, the sign, you better tackle it, because after it, there's no any other chance on it, because suicide itself is an end. So there's no other cure, treatment for suicide. But the tendency can be reversed when it notices. And one of those tendencies are those signs of distress, that compel people to try to induct in certain behavior in order to be able to cope or to be able to maneuver themselves along with these internal struggles they are experiencing day by day. Okay,
very good. Now, that's the point. You mentioned of what? Isolation. There is someone who have a sufficient exposure, mouth-to-mouth exposure, is now withdrawing from people. It could be a likely sign of suicide, or someone's suicidal tendency.
Yeah.
The other one you may mention that a person wants to become a desperado, to do things that are not convenient per se, due to what? Internal or intrinsic crisis, and it's a battle of you. Yes, identified with these three things. Battle of you. The mind is troubled over what? Circumstances. Now, the issue now is that for someone exhibiting these three traits, most people handle them ignorantly. And like you said, the best is referral. Now, the question is, how can this situation, is it like a first aid that people can give, people nearby, maybe neighbors, family members can give or introduce as the first level of reversing the trend for someone who is becoming suicidal?
Okay, thank you very much. Remember, like I said, most people will have labeled someone who is addicted to certain drug. Oh, that is this, he's a drunkard. He's used to that. As we continue to look at these issues in the society, we need to know that it's a demand on all of us to be sensitive to these trends, not until the acts, in our cause. What are those signs we need to really seize to be able to prevent this act? Well, you know, apart from withdrawal effect, we also engage these peoples in a talk. When we begin to notice distractive, language from them, as if the burden is too much for them, the world is all over. Now, remember that at this point, they are not only using it, the substance, either alcohol, whatever they are actually addicted to be able to cope, but also they are using it as a means of escaping the challenges which they are facing. And at a point, that substance may not be enough for them. That substance may not be adequate for them. So the next thing is, to end up the life.
Okay.
Remember, in the process of indulging in this substance use, there are thoughts, lines. Okay. And these thought lines are also manifested in their behavior and their actions in relating with people, which you can see that clue. No one who eventually commits suicide that has not actually lived one clue or the other. But it takes all of us to be aware of what it takes and to be sensitive in order to help preventing this act.
Okay, very good, sir. Now we're going on a very short break and we'll be back as soon as possible. Thank you, viewers.
All right, thank you. So, okay. So 3, 2, 1, and welcome back and action.
Welcome back, our dear viewers.
Give me like 2 seconds.
Okay.
So 3, 2, 1, and action.
Welcome back, our dear, most esteemed viewers. We are back to the topic, this drug addiction, and right now we are trying to elaborate and know more about the challenges involving suicide as a result of drug addiction. Now, according to what you said, sir, depression is a big-time causative factor. A depressed soul is a candidate for suicide, but a depressed soul will go through the route of a addiction first as a transit zone. Taking the drug consumption will reverse the depression. When that fails, the next step is what? Suicide. So what the patient is looking for is an escape route from the crisis. It's a way to leave the crisis behind and detach finally. So the way forward is that most depressed souls who are manifesting those signs are most likely to engage or indulge in drug consumption, become addicted to the drugs, and finally commit suicide. So like a tree, it's like a layers, okay? Now, sir, what can be done? Like you said, the first challenge is that people often term the crisis as addiction. Meanwhile, what will lead to suicide is only been manifesting step by step, like a metamorphosis. First one is depression. Depression being the foundation of it all. The first transit zone is the addiction, and thereafter the escape way is what? Suicide. So most people often wrongly label it as what? Addiction. They label the suicidal tendency as an addiction situation. So, like I said, the first aid is like people should come closer to interact with the patient, and that can be best done by the psychologist. Now, this question is about concerning the psychologists in Nigeria. To what extent have they really worked intensively about this addiction and suicide?
Yeah, thank you very much. When we talk about addiction and disease, remember I said depression is one of the risk factors.
Yes.
There are other
factors associated.
other mental illness that are associated with it, And when we also talk about addictions, it's not that addiction itself that leads to depression.
Yes.
It's vice versa.
Vice versa.
Someone can be depressed and tuned into
Addiction.
substance use as a coping measure. And someone also can be indulged in addictions and is result into
Depression.
depressions and leads to suicide.
Okay.
Remember, even alcohols that a lot of people put is are depressants themselves, and you know there is these thoughts that goes in people's head that people are nurturing, and the way we process information in us, the way we process information really determines a lot about how we cope with daily day activities. Now, the role of the psychology is to be able to help us develop healthy coping skills to be able to meet up with the demands of life. Day by day, we cannot run with the demands of life. But at the end of the day, some of us are vulnerable due to the natures of our development, the way we grow, the environment or the family we find ourselves in, and some certain things makes a lot of people susceptible to mental health problems and issues. Now, psychology is important, and they have different dimensions. We have them in different areas of life, although we are not much actively in the country, and there is a need for more awareness to be created about the need for psychology and to be properly engaged. Now, there is an active involvement of the associations in different compartments of psychologies. We have clinical psychology, we have developmental psychology, and we have, social, and we have all these people work in different sectors to be able to breed healthy, behaviors,
population,
and also to reduce, stress and then distress around our daily activities, either at work, at home, in school, and wherever we engage ourselves. The role of psychology is to promote healthy behavior, and there are increases in the activities of psychology day by day, and the demand is on an increase. But most importantly, it is for the government to render a support that will actually help to establish a firm regulations and involvements of psychology in different sectors. So that is most important. Right now, in the sector of the mental health, there's a need for the approval of this mental health bill, as well as engagement, full engagement of psychology in the civil service, which is very important right now. Once psychology is properly engaged in different sectors, it will help to increase healthy coping lifestyles in the family, in the workplace, and this also will help us to be able to curb all these devices and excess that can lead to suicide.
Very good stuff. Now, in a nutshell, we need psychologists every now and then.
Yes, very sure.
And
very sure.
The country is definitely is understaffed in terms of psychologists.
Yes.
We don't have enough psychologists around.
Yeah, we have a lot of psychologists that are trained at the first degree, but until you're training up to master degree and PhD, you are not considered a full psychologist.
Oh, why is it that
you are the first degree at the BSc level? You are a general introduction to psychology.
Wow, for
because
4 years?
psychology is wide.
For 4 years?
Yes, and with that general introduction, it can also, you can apply your knowledge in various settings or organizations to promote healthy behavior. But in terms of reading professional services, where your services is still towards drug addicts or mental illness, society, organizational behavior and all that, you need to have minimum a master degree where you are specialized because of the vast demands of the details required to be able to render the services. So that's why psychologists requires that specific professional focus and training. So as such, we need an increases in engagements of these expertise are variously to be brought into focus of areas of focus where they are trained at. When you don't create that room for them, you just discovered they finish their masters or PhD, they either goes into teaching education line or venture into other arms of businesses or career. But when you create the room for them to be able to practice, where there is a viable law in the society and the government, it enhances the chance for them to practice and also promote mental health and healthy behavior across various sectors, in the government setting, in the community, in the business setting, and wherever you find that psychologists is very important. We can engage them at various fields of life.
Thank you, sir. I'm really grateful for your presence here. And in a nutshell, the psychological profession is very broad, and it has different compartments, tailored and well designed to take care of each specific human need. And ultimately, with time, as time goes on, with more cases of addiction and suicide, the government will finally make this profession to be well inscribed and embedded in every profession in the country.
In Lagos, we are doing more work now in Lagos, National Association of Psychology in Lagos. We are really working as to ensure that Lagos is, they are aware of the need of psychologists, and also they are engaging the expertise that are available. There's this collaboration within us, and there's a quick response to meet needs as it requires.
All right, viewers, I know that you already gained a lot from our master psychologist, Mr. Nathaniel. It's a pleasure to have you right here in the studio. And when Ness is back, he will dive more into the specific needs of people and into the different branches of psychology, the purpose of what? Mass educating everybody. Thank you so much, viewers. Next time we'll be here, same session. Have a nice time, everybody.